Welcome back to the discussion, Data Insights. What would you do if you knew? Sponsored by Teradata on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. My guest today is Alan Ford, Director of Government System Pre-Sales, Teradata. I'm your moderator, John Gilroy. You know, in the federal community, data really has been talked about many times on Gartner. And Gartner has this quadrant for data visualization, and that's a much battled space. Teradata has an interesting take on the whole idea. Rather than visualization for the sake of visualization, they ask about the limitations of visualization. Alan, how does visualization impact Teradata's value proposition?
So, John, you're referring to the business intelligence magic quadrant that Gartner produces on a yearly or so basis. So, Teradata, we don't produce a BI tool in of itself. We prefer to be the ultimate enabler of all the players in the business intelligence space. So we work well with all of them, be it MicroStrategy or Tableau or Cognos or you name any business intelligence tool. In fact, for those formerly independent players that have been acquired by other database vendors for the purpose of vertical integration, our customers have actually run them more efficiently on Teradata. We've demonstrated this with OBIEE, which is Oracle's product, and Microsoft Analytical Services. So we're kind of like the BYOBI, the bring your own business intelligence tool of the space. You bring it, and we'll make it run better.
Would the word overlay fit here? Is that what it provides, something like an overlay between systems?
The business intelligence are overlays between on top of databases and potentially between systems. And again, we make them run better because we have database techniques inside the database that can tune the structures that make these tools produce their results.
Well, many times people who've been involved in radio say they've seen it all. And I think that's what I understand here from Teradata is what they're doing is they're taking experience from many different areas of understanding data and applying it into this very tricky world where there's data sets that are changing all the time, different types of data are coming in, new data is being introduced in sensors that didn't exist before. And I think that was the example you used earlier about taking just a scrambled bunch of data and applying Teradata and understanding it. It seems like the techniques here are very, very subtle and qualitative in nature. Is that right?
True. In today's world, you have to have an agile development methodology. So the former paradigm where you'd put in a release request for some sort of update and you worked on it for 6 months and released it maybe a few months later doesn't work anymore. You have to be able to adapt and change to requirements quickly so that if there is a new sensor stream or big data feed that a data scientist would like to access, that person needs to be able to access that feed and get it into the system as quickly as possible.
You know, when I think of big data, I think of NASA feeds and even HHS medical information. I never think of fraud. Your technology can be applied to, regular day-by-day concerns like fraud investigation and mitigation risk. Is that right?
Yeah, fraud analytics is one of our best use cases in both the federal and state government agency space. So we referenced CMS before, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. We have a huge enterprise data warehouse there that CMS calls the Integrated Data Repository, the IDR. It's about 600 terabytes and growing. It's helped detect and recover an average of $3.3 billion of fraud, waste, and abuse every year for the past 3 years. That's $10 billion in the last 3 years. That's a lot. It's based on a high-volume data warehouse, includes information such as beneficiary data, claims information, provider data, contract information. The combination of all these data sources into one integrated environment empowers the agency to use the data to generate new insight. And it's highly effective and efficient. For example, every $1 spent in fraud control results in an average recovery of $8. So in June of last year alone, one joint task force between HHS and DOJ stopped $900 million in fraud via false billing schemes across hundreds of different individual medical providers. That was all powered by big data in the IDR.
I think that's the key word, agile, here, because there's data that's being generated that no one could have anticipated 18 months ago. I mean, there's sensors put on aerospace equipment, there's sensors put on cars, there's independent cars. There's so much data being generated every day that I think it's hard for most companies to be able to pivot and move with the traditional way of doing things. So you must have to take your qualitative approach and change it depending on the conditions of everything that's presented to you.
Indeed, the data is exploding. If you consider just maybe one test flight from a Boeing aircraft for 1 hour generating a terabyte of data, that's a huge amount of data to just ingest alone. To make sense of it, that's taking it to the next level altogether.
There was a recent event at Google where there was a little cyber activity there where people got deceived. No one could have anticipated it. No one could have predicted it, but I'm sure some of this information may be dumped on your lap and saying, well, you have this qualitative understanding of these concepts of cybersecurity. Apply these same principles to a cyber attack.
So yeah, cybersecurity is another big area where big data can be helpful. We view cybersecurity as another type of data problem. And the more information you can collect and make sense, the better models you can create to perhaps predict that something nefarious may be happening inside your network.
And this is the exact criticism of Google, is that they didn't respond quickly enough when this attack happened. Maybe they were lacking some analytical approach to what was going on in their system. There's so much out there. I mean, how much, there's so much noise.
That could be very true. For any delay incurred in stopping a bad actor inside a network, the damage escalates exponentially.
And the bad actor could be a cyber criminal. It could be a fraudster. It could be data coming in from the moon, all kinds of different ways, and structured the same way with your approach.
It could even be an internal source that the company has not been able to track because they don't have the sophisticated analytics required to do so.
We're going to have to pause here for a short break. My guest today is Alan Ford, Director of Government Systems Pre-Sales at Teradata. I'm your moderator, John Gilroy, on the discussion, Data Insights. What would you do if you knew? Sponsored by Teradata on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com.